Hi, I'm Wendy, and today we're going to discuss reflexes throughout the lifespan. So a reflex is an automatic response initiated from an external stimulus. A good example of a reflex is if you go to touch something hot, your body knows pretty fast that it's hot, and your withdrawal reflex will pull your hand away generally before you get too burnt. Primitive reflexes we'll start off with, and those are reflexes that are present in babies in utero and right after birth, and they generally integrate several months after birth depending on the reflex. There's different timelines for each reflex, which we won't discuss today, but all the primitive reflexes help the baby to initiate normal movement patterns as they begin to walk and crawl and sit up. So the primitive reflexes are very important for survival and development in the womb and in the early months after birth. Some of the common ones are the Moro. That's the startle reflex. I'm going to bring my friend Teddy over to show us how this works. So the Moro this is like the baby's first fight or flight reflex, and it tends to turn into the adult startle reflex around 4 months old. So with the Moro, if the baby hears a loud noise, or maybe you're going to put them in their crib and you're putting their head down, they startle, you'll see their arms go out, and then they'll quickly come right back in. And hopefully, if their sensory system is developing at that point, they'll be able to settle down rather easily from that. The next one is the Palmer. The Palmer reflex is if you were to touch the baby's palm right under the fingers, then they'll close. So when you put your finger in a baby's hand, they'll close their fingers around yours because of the Palmer reflex. This is helping them to develop a grasp pattern for later on when they're playing with toys, and even later when they're starting to write and color and things like that. We have the ATNR, which is the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, and basically this one is a reflex, a prevention of them falling off if you lay them on a couch for a minute, maybe while you're diaper changing. It prevents them from rolling. So if the baby turns their head, Teddy's head is not too flexible here, that same arm will go out and the other arm will come in, and that's the fencing pose. So that's going to look like head turns, arm comes out, and this arm comes out. So it's like a kickstand if they go to try to roll over off of that surface. The next one is the, I didn't write here. The next one is the spinal galant. The spinal galant helps with, in utero, it helps with the birthing process. So with the spinal galant, if you were to stroke the baby's back, the side of the spine that you're stroking, they will turn their body that way. If you stroke the other side, then they're going to turn that way. So for babies that are born vaginally, that reflex will help them get down the birth canal. Babies that are born by C-section tend to have a harder time integrating this reflex because they didn't get that side-to-side movement as they were descending the birth canal. So that might be something, if you have a C-section baby, they may need to work on helping them to integrate that reflex. And then we have the last one that we're talking about for the primitive is the TLR. And the TLR is the tonic labyrinthine reflex, and this helps maintain the head and prepares the baby for rolling over, creeping, crawling, standing, and walking. So what the TLR does, there's on the back, if they're in supine, Their head is back, their extremities, arms and legs, will be an extension. If they are in prone, the head is down, and that's going to facilitate their legs and arms into flexion to get them into that position for rocking and eventually crawling. If there's many different, each reflex has signs and symptoms that you'll see of the child. If those reflexes are not integrated, you might see some of these signs and symptoms. Poor impulse control, fidgeting, poor dexterity, eye tracking difficulty, toe walking, motion sickness, difficulty gazing from far point to near point, and poor posture. So it's a variety of these. I didn't go through them for each particular reflex, but those are some of the signs that you might need to dive a little bit deeper into the reflexes to make sure that they have integrated properly. Once those reflexes are integrated, they're not just done forever. Like we have more, there's a lot of reflexes that we have that we don't even think about. When you go to the doctor and they bang on your knee and your leg kicks out, or they can do it on your elbow, that's a reflex. And if you don't respond to that, that's telling your doctor that perhaps they need to look neurologically to see if there's some other problems. But now we'll talk about some of the reflexes throughout your lifespan that help protect you. So head righting corrects the position of the body in relation to the head and helps to maintain your balance and stability. So if you're tipping, your head generally isn't going to tip with your shoulders. Your head's going to try to stay up so that you can stay upright and correct that balance. If your head followed your shoulders, then you probably would fall a lot more than we do when we lose our balance. We have the parachute, and the parachute is forward, backward, and sideways. Basically, when a child or an adult falls in any of these directions, the arms will extend to break the fall. So if I'm going forward, my arms are going to go down in front of me. If I go sideways, my arm will come out to protect me, basically to protect your head from hitting the ground. You might break a wrist or something, but that's better than having a brain injury. And if you happen to fall backwards, your arm should go behind you to help catch you from that direction. And then there's equilibrium tilting. And this one, think of this one like if you're in a boat and it's rocking, okay? Or you're on a roller coaster or something and you're rocking. When you tilt one side, your body will correct the other way. So if I'm tilted this way, my body's going to correct this way in all of those directions to help you maintain that upright posture. And then we have the stagger. The stagger is an interesting one. Let's say you're walking, you go to step off a curb and you fall, you lose your balance. Your body will automatically take 2 steps to try to recorrect your balance, and hopefully that you will not fall all the way down from there. In some cases, with an acquired brain injury, the brain goes into a fight or flight response, and you may see some of these primitive reflexes return. I know when I was doing my field work in the hospital, if we saw patients with a brain injury, a CBA or anything like that, a lot of times we would see that ATNR come back in, the startle would come back in. Typically this is when there's some lesion in the frontal lobe. So this makes, of course, if they have the primitive reflexes coming back in, it could make it more difficult for them to complete their ADLs. If you're trying to get dressed and you're going into an ATNR pattern, it's going to be hard to get your clothing on. So we might need to look at ways to compensate, or work on some activities to integrate those reflexes. And as people age, their reaction times tends to slow down for these reflexes. So somebody, if we go back to the stagger, you know, a younger person stepping off the curb and can take those 2 steps and more than likely correct themselves before they fall. An older person is going to have a slower reaction time, more than likely. So when they might take those 2 steps too late and then they've already fallen. So it's important to keep in mind the reaction time as people do age, that it can affect their safety. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.